hopefully I'm not dead auditorily here, but oh man.
I mean, it could be my speakers, I suppose.
No. All right. Hello, Limey and Crunchy World. I am coming at you with our friend Julieann. Um, I'm just fiddling around here on my computer to let you know my audio is the reason for our delay getting on here. I've never had an issue with it before, and we hop on today, and of course, it's a little skitsy. So I'm going to talk really loud into my speaker, and hopefully you can hear me well enough for Julieann to just take it away with her story today. But we're so glad to have you here for the Journey On interview for this week. Julieann actually has multiple hats that she wears, including nutritional therapy degree, correct? Certification.
It's a certification, but yeah, nutritional therapy.
And music therapy, right?
That one's a degree. Yep.
Degree in that. Okay, but still very cool. So I know I was gonna flip flop them. But anyway, I asked her to come in here today because you guys have given me actually a lot of questions about women's health and female issues in relationship to Lyme disease. And Julieann is a fellow Lyme warrior, and she is actually doing a lot right now for her own healing process, which is so cool that she took the time to be here in the middle of all that. So I just thought I would turn it over to Julieann to let her share a little snippet or the synopsis of her story and how she ended up here. So go ahead, Julieann.
Okay. Yeah. So I guess I'll give everyone the brief summary. Although, as I know, so many of us, we could write books in terms of just the drama involved, right? But so I was bit in 2012. I had a mark on the back of my arm. It was not a bullseye. It was a deep purple bruise. I had a 103.6 degree fever that came on suddenly. I was totally delirious. My mom just took care of me all night long. The fever came and went for a week. I went to go see my doctor. He told me it was just a virus and didn't even test me for anything, although I asked for a Lyme disease test because my father had Lyme disease and had the same immune reaction, had the same purple spot, didn't have a bullseye. We had the same doctor too. So I'm concerned that there was a little bit of genderism that kind of came to play, which I think a lot of us also know happens a lot with women in the healthcare. And so I kind of went about my life. I slowly got sicker and sicker and sicker, and I became a nutritional therapist and thought that maybe just my nutrition was weird. And, I did a lot, and the nutritional therapy definitely helped. I think it kept me afloat. Then I went and I hiked the Appalachian Trail, which was amazing. And I did it all with a really, really clean diet. But the stress kind of set that balance my body had with Lyme totally off. And after the Appalachian Trail, I stopped pooping for 8 months. I had to do enemas every day. It was horrible. I finally went to go see a different doctor. Keep in mind, this whole time I was seeing that original doctor, and he kept telling me, I was like, can you test me for something? And he kept telling me like, no, you're just anxious. You just have stress. I just was still just never tested throughout that whole, it was like 4 years. And just was never tested for anything other than like a thyroid test, a TSH test. And then I finally went to go see a naturopath, and she tested me. And at that point, she tested me for autoimmune stuff. I had the highest amount of autoimmune antibodies you could even test, or titers, right? I had the highest titers you could even test. It just was capped off the charts. And eventually we figured out it was Lyme disease. And we eventually took that Lyme test, and I've been through 4 years now on and off of different antibiotics. I just did a stint on IV antibiotics, and we're kind of in the cleanup process right now. I did have brain damage. I lost my ability to drive. For a while, I couldn't really talk very well. I couldn't walk. It was just a total mess. And I'm kind of just on that rebound now where I'm in a whole bunch of therapies. I don't work anymore. I'm on medical disability, and I am just cleaning everything up so I can get back out into the world.
Okay. I know you guys can hardly hear me.
I can hear you when you talk really loud.
I'm going to talk loud. I'm sorry. I got a comment already about that. This audio issue happened right as we were getting on and never happened to me before. So I'm not sure what's going on and I don't have a way to fix it immediately. So I'm going to let Julieann do most of the talking. But Julieann, I was hoping you could tell us then a little bit about female health and healing in relationship to nutrition and what you've learned along the way, maybe.
Yeah. So, and I will put this out there. If any of your listeners have like very specific questions, they should throw them out there. I can't promise I can answer them, but I'll try. You learn a lot along the way, right? When you just have been in this mess, this health mess for so long, like, you know, the amount of blood work I can read now and tell from someone else, like, oh, you have an autoimmune disease. Like, you need to go see this doctor. And they'll be like, oh yeah, I do. Right. Like, you have lupus. Like, you know, I could just go out there and just, I don't know, it's terrible. But so I guess, you know, I have a few thoughts with women's health. And I think the first thing I just really want to throw out there is just, you know, I think women's health, we think of hormones often, right? And, you know, I want, and at least as a nutritional therapist, we're really trained to kind of address health symptoms. We're called, you know, it's called a north to south process, right? There are things at the beginning that if they're going wrong, there's just going to be a trickle down effect of a whole bunch of issues. So your main symptom may be anxiety, right? But that is so far down the list, right? Like it could be something up here that's triggering this down here, or triggering the acne, or triggering the really bad period cramps, or triggering, you know, your menstrual cycles being off, which if you don't track your menstrual cycles yet, that's a really important indicator of your health. So I really recommend tracking those very carefully, getting to know your ovulation cycle, even if you're not trying to have a baby. That's a really important just indicator of health overall. You know, fertility is just such a great indicator. So really, when I like to talk about women's health, I like to pull back and look at the things up here, right? The things upstream, because if you can address the things upstream, this stuff tends to figure itself out. You know, a great example of this is estrogen, right? Estrogen is something that can be recycled by the body and or be processed by the body and broken down. But if our liver and if our detoxification processes are blocked and not going well, we're going to start having a buildup of estrogen in our body, which can cause a whole host of issues, as we know. So I feel like it would be really important for your listeners if we just kind of address those like top 3 or 4 basic things at the top that you want to start with. But again, if there's like a question along the way, just wave and we'll pause and we'll address, or if it seems like it's on topic, and maybe at the end we'll kind of address all those questions too, whatever you want. Gotcha. Sound good?
No questions yet.
Okay, great. Okay, so number 1 is really digestion, right? Like how we're digesting our food. And you know, it's interesting because let's say your thyroid is off or something, or you're having anxiety, or you're constipated or something, and you're doing all this work to focus on just those symptoms. But let's say you have acid reflux. Like that's a top issue, right? Acid reflux, that's right here. That's like we put food in, it's in our belly, it's not digesting properly right here, and we get acid reflux. So if that part is off, then the rest of it is going to totally be off. We're not going to be getting our nutrients the way that we need to be getting them. We're probably going to have inflammation all throughout our digestive tract, which can trigger a whole bunch of different issues. So if you're sitting there and you're like, oh my gosh, I do have acid reflux, right? Like so many people do. It's important to remember, like, you need to address that first. Like, that's probably one of the first things you need to be addressing. And when I say addressing, I don't mean just taking a whole bunch of, oh gosh, what are the calcium tablets that everyone takes? Yeah, don't take those. I know they're really helpful in the initial, and they can be helpful at first, especially if you have ulcers in your esophagus, or if you have ulcers in your stomach. Those can be helpful just while you're in the healing process, although there are herbs that I would prefer people used over those. I think long term, you need to think about identifying what is giving you acid reflux. Usually there are food triggers that can be giving people acid reflux. Stress, obviously, we know can giving people acid reflux. I know everyone hates the stress. Like, I hated it when doctors be like, you're just stressed. I'd be like, screw you. Like, everything can't be explained by stress, but it is really, really important to acknowledge that, stress is definitely, a potential indicator or a potential cause. Food deficiencies can be a cause of acid reflux, especially zinc deficiencies. Zinc and a whole bunch of B vitamins. They're really important in creating our stomach acid. I know most people think of acid reflux as an issue of too much stomach acid, but it's often too little. Right. And Adele shaking your head there. Yeah, it's often too little. And what happens is that our stomach has to reach a certain acidity level before the rest of our body, before the valve opens and it allows the food to go down the rest of our body, because that acid level is what triggers our bile to be secreted from our gallbladder. And that super acidic level is what is necessary to have everything downstream work, right? So the thing is that the stomach will just hold on to those food contents, and they're going to ferment. The food's going to putrefy. It's going to go rancid. You're going to get belching, right? You're going to get pain in your chest, and you're going to get acid reflux. And taking that calcium tablet is literally, or antacids, I should say, which some of them are calcium tablets. It literally, in calcium brings, the reason why they use calcium is because it neutralizes acid. It brings the pH up to like a more neutral level. But the issue is that eventually that food is just going to get forced down through your system. And now you have all this putrefying, rancid food that's not at the correct pH level to trigger the enzymes that need to be triggered to help you break down that food. So now you have all of these putrefying proteins going down through your system, and they're absolutely going to wreak havoc throughout your entire digestive system. Yeah, I know. It's terrible. Yeah, it's bad. So, and then we wonder why someone might be constipated. Well, like, we need our bile to be triggered. And that bile trigger starts triggering the peristalsis. So the movement of your intestines, and allows stuff to come out of your colon. But if that's not being triggered, the enzymes and everything that has to be triggered for you to have a nice poop isn't going to happen. It's just what's going to happen.
Well, and we all know pooping is hugely important for detox. So you have to fix this.
Yeah,
Right?
we got to fix our poop, right? It's one of those things I remember with this original doctor too, because I had a lot of constipation growing up. I know no one likes to talk about their poop, but poop is like, poof. Yeah, if you're not having good poops, man, there's something wrong. I remember my doctors being like, constipation is totally normal, just take Miralax. But I remember being like, no, but like, I'm a 20-year-old kid. Like, I shouldn't be, or at the time, I'm not 20 anymore, but the time, like, I just knew that was clearly not the right answer, because clearly something was off. It turns out I'm intolerant of eggs and dairy and gluten, like a lot of other people once they get to a chronic inflammatory state. And those things, when I eat those things, my poop stops. It's just, that's what happens. There's too much inflammation and everything stops. It halts, right? Yeah. So thinking of digestion as a north to south process is just number one. If you want to heal your Lyme disease, you need to heal your digestive tract first.
I agree.
Yeah. And, you think about all the inflammation that can happen when your digestive tract is off. We know that Lyme bacteria feeds off of that inflammation. Like, that's literally what feeds them, is all those inflammatory cytokines and things. They love it. You're creating a perfect environment for Lyme and the co-infections to thrive. So one of the first things you really have to do is figure out that digestive piece. Yeah. Do you have any questions yet, Adele?
I don't. I'm loving this. Hang on. I'm reading the comments quick because I was
Okay.
engrossed in that discussion. Yeah, someone's talking about how Wendy talks about how she takes digestive enzymes with her meals for her Lyme healing. I do too. I think a lot of us
Yeah.
do. My one friend Melissa, who doesn't have diagnosed Lyme but has other autoimmune stuff going on, including she's actually was just on here talking about her health journey the other day. So she includes some autoimmune stuff like lupus and whatnot.
Yep.
She says I go the other way with her bowels. So still, right? Still a sign of imbalance.
Yes. Yep. Yeah. And so that's really important to address. And like, I think it's also important to say though, I worked on my digestion for a really long time and thought like, I just need to figure this out. And I thought, if I'm still sick, it's just because I haven't figured out my digestion. It's also important to remember that's not the only factor, right? Like there are other things that can be making your Lyme disease worse. So work on digestion, but just know it's not the holy grail too, right? That's definitely something just keep in mind. The next thing I think it's so important for anyone with a chronic illness to address and figure out is your food intolerances. Yeah, and I know like I went in and I had the food allergy testing done with an allergist, and they're like, "You're fine, you're not allergic to anything." And I was like, "Well, I don't know, because I have like instant diarrhea when I eat eggs. Like maybe there's something going on." Or it was either I don't poop for 3 days or I have instant diarrhea. So I don't know, something's going on. And I think the best way to do this, I know it's so tempting to just pay thousands of dollars for these blood tests that may tell you if you're allergic to something or not. Those results are usually very inconsistent. It's if you have the money, do it. Why not? Right? Like maybe you can start with those foods, but if any of your listeners, if they have not done an elimination diet yet, just to figure out any foods that might be triggering symptoms, it is absolutely worth doing. I know my husband, doesn't have Lyme disease, but he did have really bad acid reflux, and I finally convinced him to do an elimination diet, and he did it so well. This guy, though his willpower around food, I admire so much. But he like took 3 or 4 months to totally eliminate foods, went to a broth diet, added in meat, added in veggies, groups of veggies at a time. He found it was bananas, zucchini, alcohol, like alcohol's obvious, let's just be clear. But bananas and zucchini, those are triggering his acid reflux. And he found a whole host of foods that were triggering his acid reflux. Wheat was triggering it. And although he still has a little bit of acid reflux on occasion because he did some serious damage to his esophagus and to his valve, it's way, way better now. I found for me personally, I was getting severe arthritis to the point that my ankle was in totally locked position, couldn't walk on my foot. And when I did my elimination, I really found eggs, gluten, dairy to be my triggers. And I know it's really easy to just say like, oh, well, just go paleo or just do this or just do that. Or be vegan or, whatever fad diet you want to throw out there. I think it's really just important to note that like everyone's food intolerances are going to be totally different. So you may actually be able to handle wheat really well, but maybe rice you cannot handle, or maybe something else you can't handle. And it's just important to go through that process and know that healthy food is just what's healthy for you, right? Obviously processed foods, we'll take those off the list, but like avocados for you might be amazing. Avocados for me might trigger a whole bunch of inflammation. So really taking the time to do an elimination diet, I think from a nutrition perspective in Lyme and just women's health in general, no matter who you are, taking the time to work with someone if you need to work with someone or doing the research, but figuring out a way of figuring out your trigger foods. For all you know, it's like corn and you've been eating tortilla chips every day and you're wondering why you have arthritis really bad. And maybe the Lyme is actually gone at this point. Like, who knows?
Yeah, so true. Same experience for me. Doing an elimination diet for me was one of the best things I did for my health So
Yep.
you're right, even though it stinks.
It does. It totally stinks. I love food so much, so it's really hard to eliminate foods. But I love walking more, so I don't know.
Exactly. Same. Just if I may interject, Wendy wants to ask, what about delayed reactions? I think she means to foods.
Yeah. So when I do elimination diets, when I advise people to do elimination diets, I recommend not like just adding one food every 3 or 4 days and keeping that food consistent at each meal. Or like and making sure you're introducing that food in each meal so you're getting like a heavier load of that food. Delayed reactions definitely happen. That's totally true. And maybe that means if you're concerned about that, it just means you should slow down how quickly you're adding in foods. Maybe you want to do just so instead of just doing one new food at a time, I like to do like a group of new foods at a time, so like 3 or 4. That way you're just so it doesn't take you 3 years to add back in foods. So do 3 or 4 foods at a time. See how you do for the week or two if you're concerned about delayed reaction. And then if you have a reaction, then bring it down to where you were before you had a reaction. And then just add in each one of those foods in that food group independently and to figure out which food it is. What you'll normally find is that you can add in these groups of 3 or 4 foods at a time and you'll be just fine. And then you'll have one that kind of triggers a reaction. You go back to before the group of foods before this reaction, and then you just add in them one at a time and you'll probably figure out your triggers by then.
Yeah.
The other thing that's worth noting is if you're with a delayed reaction, most of the time, so let's say you have acne or something like that, and that's normally a delayed reaction. You're not going to eat chocolate and then immediately break out. Chocolate makes me break out. But I get the reaction a week later or so, right? So I would consider that like to be a delayed reaction. One thing you can do though is you can measure your pulse while you're eating that food. Have you ever heard of the pulse testing, Adele? Oh yeah. Oh, this is great. Okay. Yeah, this is interesting. So before you eat on an empty stomach, nice calm empty stomach, you're relaxed, sit down, get calm, have your food that you want to test in front of you, take your pulse, take it for a full 60 seconds. Don't take it for 15, take it for 60 seconds. And, write that down. Put the food in your mouth that you want to test. Just swish it around. Don't swallow, but just swish it around for a minute. It's gross because you're just like, blah, 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 blah. But your body, there's a connection between our tongue and our hypothalamus. And if it senses stuff that's going to be allergic to, it's immediately going to start increasing your pulse. And you're going to start getting a reaction from your pulse because your body's just prepping itself. And that's if it's a more of an allergic intolerant reaction, not if it's because you could also be having a bad trigger, but it could be because you don't have enough enzymes. So I'm just throwing that out there. This isn't like sure, but it's worth doing with your foods too. If your pulse goes up by more than 6, that is generally recognized as you're having some sort of intolerant response to it, some sort of kind of allergic response to this. Of course, an allergist would be like, no, you're totally fine, but like, do it. It's really interesting. I know with me, all the foods that give me constipation and arthritis, like I go up by like 20 points, right?
No, what does it hurt to try?
Yeah, it's free. Like, just do it.
That is really helpful information. Cool. Thank you for sharing that.
Yeah, I believe it's called the cocoa pulse test.
Okay.
Cocoa pulse test or cacao pulse. I don't know, whatever it is. There's some sort of, it's called the pulse test. It's a nutritional therapy trick.
I love it. All right, let me check the board again here quick. They're loving that information. No new questions. So
Okay, I've got some more tips then.
Yeah, go for it.
Okay, so addressing food. So we've gone over digestion, addressing food allergies or intolerances or food triggers. The next I would say would be addressing food deficiencies. And this is one I would suggest finding a naturopath near you who does more blood work. There is some advanced testing that they can do where they kind of like open up your cell and see which nutrients actually got into your cell. Because you could be pumping yourself with all of these supplements, but what really matters is what gets into your cell and is usable. So I forget the name of the test, and I'm so sorry, but my naturopath did this with me, and it was really helpful, and it showed me nutrients that I was specifically depleted in. So for me, it was like vitamin E, vitamin A, vitamin D. Everyone's deficient in vitamin D, vitamin K2. Everyone's deficient in those things. Blanket across the board. I say everyone just needs to be taking vitamin D3 and vitamin K2 specifically, because K2 helps the absorption of the D3. And make sure that it goes to the right place. So yeah, so just addressing your nutritional deficiencies. Just the way I like to just give people the imagery around this is your body is trying really hard to heal itself, but if you're not giving it the tools or the equipment to heal itself, it can't do it, right? Like you can't build a house without lumber or concrete or whatever. Like you can wish for it, you can imagine the white light of healing all you want, but like if you don't have zinc or protein or whatever, like if you don't have these things to or choline to heal your brain or whatever, like it's not gonna, I don't know, it's not gonna happen. And yeah, so really just looking through addressing those nutritional deficiencies, trying to figure them out. It's worth spending the money on. Just like put aside $1,000 and be like, I mean, the testing, it's not that much. I think it's like $400 or something. But it is worth doing. Find a naturopath who can help you through that. It's worth it. Did you have any nutritional deficiencies, Adele? Have you tested that? Yeah, okay.
Specializes in nutrition and genetics.
Perfect.
And yeah, it was phenomenal. If you're looking for recommendation, anyone, I can certainly recommend her. She's in Pennsylvania, but I think she does consults, like wherever. But I saw her for a while, and I would like to go back again for follow up eventually. She works with my Lyme provider too, actually. So it's kind of perfect. Like they work together in the same office. So, anyway, yes, I was actually severely amino acid deficient.
Huh.
Like horribly. That's corrected. We corrected it naturally with supplement.
Yep.
And I just maintain that now. I also have MTHFR and COMP-T. I have some genetic issues that we are working on suppressing through nutrition. And so therefore, I was messed up in my vitamin D and stuff.
Yes.
I was severely deficient in certain Bs, probably because of my genetics. Again, correctable. It's just you don't know until you know. I also cannot take Tylenol or certain medications.
Oh, you have that one. You have that genetic.
I have the genetic pathway cut off from processing and detoxing certain medications through my liver. So knowing, that's just some of the things I remember off the top of my head.
Yeah.
Knowing these things is so helpful when you're trying to heal and you're taking copious amounts of vitamins, like you said. If you're not using them, what good is it doing?
Yeah. Yep.
So, and you're wasting your money, frankly, if you're not absorbing stuff.
Right. And this is interesting because this is where we get back to this idea of north to south, right? You could be taking these supplements to address your nutritional deficiencies, but if you're not digesting them, if your stomach acid isn't happening properly, those might just be going right through you, your hundreds of dollars worth of supplements every month, right? They're just passing through.
So painful. Yeah. Right supplements matter, and bioavailability matters, and your cell health matters, right?
Yeah. And so I just want to throw out something about supplements, and this kind of leads us into the next one, which is on toxins. Never buy supplements on Amazon. Anyone, ever. Please don't do it. They've been tested. Even if you think you're getting it right from the company, they've been placebo, or no, just fakes from China, and then relisted in the bottle, like repackaged in the bottles. It is horrible, the things that they've measured in them. Like, you are probably doing worse for yourself by buying supplements on Amazon. I know it hurts to go through a practitioner to buy them, but that's how you know you're getting it right from the company. So go through your functional medicine doctor, go through your naturopath. I know it costs a lot, but like, if you want, I mean, don't waste your money on supplements from Amazon. It's going to hurt you in the long run. Just buy them directly from the stores. If they're listed really cheap, that means they're fake, because we as practitioners are not allowed. Like, we sign papers to say we won't sell them cheaper. Like, we have to sell them at the price they tell them to sell us. So if you are buying them really cheap somewhere, that means you're getting fakes, or you're getting them illegally. They could be old and just put into new labels and new expirations. Yeah, so just be really careful about buying supplements.
Thanks. True.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, and so that brings us into toxins. And so this is kind of the other piece. I had lead poisoning. That was one of the things we figured out along my journey.
I was high in lead too.
Who isn't?
And arsenic.
Yeah, right. Yeah, and it can be. I was lead. I was Thalamine. I think that's how you say it. Thalamine. Yeah. There was a couple things that I was really high in. I had a contrast dye scan when I was younger on my ankle, and I was high in that one. I think it was gadolinium or something like that. Yeah. So, knowing your toxin load is really helpful. If you can work with someone to take a heavy metal test. I wouldn't do that though until you've worked on your digestion. And the reason is that you need your detox pathways to be going really strong, to be going happily before you do any sort of opening up of the toxin packets in our body, right? So our body stores toxins in fat cells. This is another reason why I hate it when someone just goes on this crazy cleanse without addressing their digestion and their liver first, because let's say you lose a whole bunch of weight suddenly. What you're doing is, let's say you have a whole bunch of lead or a whole bunch of pesticides, neurotoxic pesticides, being stored in your fat cells because your body's trying to keep them packed away. If you release that all at once, now you could be getting a very toxic dose of pesticides, or at least maybe not going to kill you dose, but a very neurotoxic dose, right? So you could be causing more brain damage, or just, hindering your chances of getting better. You might actually get a lot worse if you just unleash the floodgates, essentially, of toxins. So work on your digestion, make sure your pathways are opening. Your detox pathways means you should be pooping really well. You should be peeing nice and clear. You should be supporting your liver at this point with maybe some liver supplements, or at least be taking bitters. So I really, really recommend with digestion just any sort of bitter tinctures, or eating bitters, like a bitter lettuce or something like that. Bitters are what helps stimulate our bile. And bile is how we kind of excrete toxins. That's a really important process. So, but addressing your toxin load in general, you can start that from day one, right? By just making sure you're not eating foods that are coming out of plastics, by making sure day one, everyone should be testing their water. That's where I was getting my lead from. If I had known all that water I was drinking was just building up toxins. It's so sad. But I finally ended up testing my water, and I saw that we had high lead. Even though we have a well, you may have a well, you may have lead-free pipes, you might have copper pipes, but just know, so my husband and I figured this out in the whole process. We're like, how do we have lead in our water? The welding they use, it is illegal to use lead in welding, but it is still done. Plumbers, or the welders still use it, especially even like the newer houses. Like, you do not trust your water system. Just go get it tested and do a flush test and do an unflush test. So do an unflush first. So unflush is first thing in the morning. You just measure the water. That's the first thing out of your tap. So that's been what's sitting in your pipes, and that'll tell you if you have the lead in your pipes or the welding in your pipes. And then you do a flush test where you let your water run for 5 minutes or 20 minutes. And then you take another sample, and that'll tell you what's in your well or what's in your city water supply or whatever. But absolutely do both of those tests right away, because for all you know, you're dosing yourself with poison. You don't mean to. Obviously, we're all trying to do the right thing by drinking water. I don't recommend drinking water out of plastic bottles either, because you're just dosing yourself with plastic, which we know is an endocrine disruptor, which is going to make all our female issues even worse. I know. So I really recommend just checking your water and then deciding on a filter from there if you need one. But yeah, so addressing toxins, getting them out of your system, or at least getting them out of your mouth, or out if you're putting them on your body, right? I know a lot of us, I've stopped using any, if not all, most cosmetics. There are some cosmetic companies I'll use a little of, but I'm really careful about every single thing I put in my skin. Get rid of the lotions, just start putting straight up jojoba oil or olive oil on if you need to, but you don't need anything with fragrances. All those things we know have neurotoxic properties or endocrine disrupting properties. So getting rid of the candles in the house, getting rid of the fabric softeners, right? Like, stop spraying the pesticides on your lawn. That's like, oh, no. Whew. I know, it's interesting. I have a lot of friends that spray their lawns with pesticides. They're worried about ticks, which I totally get. But the thing is, if you don't spray your lawn with pesticides, you're going to get all these amazing bugs and birds that will eat the ticks. So I don't know. And then you'll stop poisoning yourself. So if you do get bit by a tick, that maybe your body will be able to naturally fight it, or have a better immune response.
Right. That's such a good point. And I'll also say there are some more natural, like yard treatments out there now.
Yeah.
Which we do use because of the like infestation of ticks
Oh,
we
yeah.
have in our area. But like the neighbors that don't use them are where we end up getting bit if we get bit.
Oh, that's so funny. Yeah.
Yeah, it's hard. But I will say what you're saying is right. It's a vicious cycle using those things sometimes too. But if you need an option, there are some cleaner.
Yeah. And a lot of them are like essential oil based, right? Like there are a lot of essential oils that we know can help repel ticks and yeah, so that's just really important to keep in mind. I have a theory that one of the reasons why us Limeys who get it really bad and get it very chronic is I think we are starting day one tick bite. We're probably starting with a very high toxic burden load. We're starting already off balance, so our body can't have a healthy response. I think if you can get your body into a place where it can have a healthy immune response, you're going to have a much better outcome in terms of your Lyme disease results, right? And like whether or not you get over it. So it's just important to put yourself in the best position possible for future infections, right? Like I still go hiking in the woods. I'm going to get bit again. I just want to make sure I'm in the best position. My body's in the best position possible for it. Yeah, so I think those were kind of my top 4 things, right? So work on digestion, work on food allergies, work on nutritional deficiencies, get your detox pathways open, and then when it's time, start addressing your toxins. I'll give a couple suggestions just to help the elimination process. Modified citrus pectin is very gentle, and that helps bind to lead. It helps bind to some other heavy metals. I think extra estrogen. It's been really effective. I've been using that a lot. That was really, really helpful for bringing down my heavy metal load. There are chelation therapies people can look into. They can be really, really rough and very, very, very expensive. So I would kind of hold those as like a last resort. I did end up doing them and it was very helpful for me. But I would really try your other options first. I throw that out there just because if you do not have a good detox system, it's going to could be dangerous, right? You just be unleashing a lot. And then alpha lipoic acid, ALA. That's really, it's so great, especially for helping out, essentially helping rebuild those neuron pathways and all those neural pathways. That's really great. If we're speaking about detox in particular, taking charcoal after, like, don't take it with meals, don't take it with supplements, take it in between. That might be good just for clinging onto things and helping to pull it out. Liposomal glutathione, did I say that? I can't remember, but Okay, yeah, you get the idea. I mean, a lot of them people have heard at this point, but things just worth. I wouldn't just take it on your own. I would go see a practitioner who can make sure you're ready to be taking some of these things. And then, just I was thinking with the ALA, because we were just talking about the pathways. If you do have Lyme and you have had cognitive degeneration because of it, I really recommend lion's mane. It's been really helpful. I ended up having a neuropsych evaluation done because my memory issues were so bad. My word finding was so bad. It was really scary. But it's been about 6 months to a year of a lot of lion's mane and a lot of these kind of neurosupporting supplements. And I've got a lot of function back too, which is really, like, it can happen. Like, we can regrow these things, which is great.
Awesome. Fabulous.
Yeah.
I love it. I agree from my experience working with knowledgeable functional medicine providers, and even my Lyme provider, who is in both camps with traditional and
Yes. Yeah.
medicine.
Which I like. I like that balance.
Yeah, I do. I actually do too. I think it's more helpful for like anybody to have both sides of the story and to hear her explanations. But anyway, she gave literally the same exact advice. So, I mean, it's right on target, especially with the detoxing, and some of those supplement ideas are great. And I've spoken about them before, and I know they're, everyone's heard of them, like you just said, but they're legitimately helpful. The mushroom things, like you said, with lion's mane, and other such,
Yeah.
plants, milk biscuits,
Yes.
right?
Yes. Yeah.
Another good liver detoxer.
Yeah, there's so many out there. Like, there's so many supportive plants. Yes.
Plant options.
Right.
Your every need.
So this is interesting. So I'm a big forager. So, like,
Cool.
I would say realistically, my number one suggestion is eat wild food and eat as much wild food as possible, and you're going to fix the rest of the stuff. But I know it's not always possible for people, but no matter, just from what I've been learning with wild foods in general, no matter where you are, there are plants out there, unless you're in the desert, I don't know, like middle desert and sand dunes. Maybe you're a little bit screwed then, but get out of the sand dunes. I don't know. But realistically, there are plants everywhere that do have properties to help your digestion, to help your liver, to help your colon, right? To help your body, to help your immune system. They're really, really powerful plants. Just for a quick example, wild blueberries contain way more nutrients and phytochemicals that help your body, help your immune system, help your skin, help your skin protect from the sun than conventional blueberries or even organic blueberries, right? Like, there is way more nutrients in a wild food than there is in the agricultural kind of version of that food. And part of it is because the wild plant still has all of its protective qualities to it, right? It naturally has to protect itself from pests. It naturally has to protect itself, and it from the environmental factors. And so it has a lot more of these phytochemicals, which are more protective kind of nutrients, so to say. And so by eating those wild foods, we end up getting way more of those properties. Yeah. So we're throwing out there. There was a couple other tips. Can I throw out there that are just more of a holistic?
Sure. And yeah, please do.
Oh, do we have a question?
Real quick, we do have one question. If you can tie this into.
Yeah.
Wendy wants to know if the modified citrus pectin is like higher histamine, or if it would be okay for someone with histamine intolerance, which I appreciate.
Oh, that's good.
I have histamine intolerance. So.
I don't know the answer to that question. I don't know. I would look it up. That's all I would say. I don't have high histamine issues, but I know citrus can sometimes be a really big trigger people with histamine issues. So I would say if you have a practitioner who might be able to give you a sample and you can kind of test it on yourself. But I don't know. I do not know the answer. I hope for your sake it doesn't, because it's awesome. It's so helpful.
Right. Well, it might be worth a try, or worth muscle testing for it.
Yeah.
Or worth like starting with, like you said, a Google search and just kind of feeling it out if it might be a right thing to
Yes.
Try and see.
Yeah, and I mean, it really is the pectin, right? So it's like if you have a pectin intolerance, then you wouldn't handle it well. So you could always just try pectin, like from the grocery store or something. You could just try, or applesauce, right? Like applesauce has a lot of pectin in it. If you handle pectin okay, you'll handle modified citrus pectin. I would think, but I can't say for sure.
Fair enough.
Yeah. I find the doctors I like the most are the ones who admit when they don't know the answer.
Yeah, you can't know everything.
Right. And I've had doctors who like to pretend they know everything, but they weren't good doctors. Okay. The one thing I just wanted to throw out there too, I'm in the middle of doing a lot of physical therapy. So I know Lyme makes my muscles really, really tight. And at this point, we're not really sure if it's some additional underlying autoimmune disease. I still have pretty high autoimmune titers. If you haven't had autoimmune testing done, please, for the love of goodness, do some autoimmune testing, because who knows, you might be dealing with lupus too or something. A lot of autoimmune diseases can be triggered by the inflammation that happens with the Lyme infection. So you might have had a predisposure to lupus. You might not have had it when you were bit, but because of the inflammation in your body, it could trigger lupus. I have been, so physical therapy, I've been doing dry needling, and it's not a pleasant process. But if you have constant muscle spasms and a lot of pain and you're kind of stuck in bed or you can't walk as much as you want because of it, a physical therapist can do something called dry needling, where they stick a needle deep into the muscle, and it's not comfortable, but it releases the spasm. It's kind of like a reset. Really recommend that, especially if you're having mobility issues and you want to exercise, but you just can't without muscle spasms. I know that tends to be my issue. That's been a helpful therapy. The other one is if you have eye involvement. I had a vision disorder that was triggered by Lyme. We know I had a spot in my brain, I had gliosis in my brain, and that's an inflammation of the glioma cells, the glial cells in the brain. The Lyme targets glial cells in the brain. We know that. And so I have a spot that they can see in my brain. It affected my vision in my visual cortex. So I've been going to vision therapy, and I think that's if you're someone like me, like I couldn't drive, I still am just getting back into it. But if you're like me and your vision was affected, go find a neuro-optomethologist. So someone who's an eye doctor who specializes in the brain kind of connection. And then maybe he'll hook you up with a vision therapist, and that's been really helpful. And then the last one I want to throw out there is I'm also doing EMDR therapy for the medical trauma. I was so resistant to seeing a therapist. I am a therapist, right? I'm a music therapist, and I work with anxiety. I work with all these things. I didn't feel like I needed a talk therapy because I could talk my way through all of this as much as I wanted to. But EMDR, it's not necessarily a talk therapy. It is you are resolving trauma that your body has been holding on to using these lights and this vision technique. And I was so skeptical, and it is working beautifully to resolve anxiety and medical trauma. The feeling of severe anxiety when you get going into all these doctors' offices and going through all these tests. There was a lot of drive anxiety that I had because of the vision disorder, which is keeping me from even being able to try driving again. And that is working. I mean, EMDR is working beautifully to help me clear it up. So if you have a lot of anxiety that was triggered by Lyme disease, it is worth finding an EMDR therapist. They're normally covered by most insurance companies. I wish I had done this 5 years ago. So just throwing it out there.
I appreciate you saying that because all those tips are super helpful, and hopefully will help at least someone along the way, because everyone has an individual journey, but you have to pursue the paths that are the healing you need, right? So
right.
Those are great suggestions for when people are stuck and like,
yes.
What do I do now? My doctor doesn't believe me. I can't help myself by myself.
Right.
So
yep.
Awesome.
Yeah. And it's, I think, as we both have learned through this is, I get very weary of anyone who has a Lyme protocol or like just like a Lyme, you got to do this, 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 or this, because really you got to rebalance your body. And when you rebalance your body will be able to help fight off the Lyme, maybe with antibiotics, maybe with herbs, whatever it is, but you got to focus on rebalancing your body. And it is totally different for everyone because we're all coming into this with a whole different set of trauma, different set of nutritional deficiencies, different set of allergies, different set of toxins. So it's important just to remember that like your journey is going to be totally unique.
Right. Amen. That's awesome. So for those struggling with female health related issues and Lyme, is there any further advice? Because I just want to swing back to that beyond obviously working from the inside out at healing. Do you have any further advice about like specific types of ways to help in those conditions, or should they just start with nutrition and those tips you gave us, or are there specialists that they should look for?
Yeah, that's a really good question. Okay, so I hope I get her name right. Danielle Val. Oh, I'll have to type her name in your group. She's a nutritional therapist who does a lot with women's issues and women's health and women empowerment. And she's just like this badass phoenix, right? She's just awesome. She's just so cool. I really like her. We met on working on a nutritional therapy project together for Mega Foods. And she's awesome. I really like her. She has a podcast with a whole bunch of practitioners who work specifically with women's health issues. And so that's just a great wealth of knowledge there if you're looking for resources. But I really do, I mean, when we say women's issues, it's like there's so many, right? And it's so broad. And I think it's just ultimately at the end of the day, we have to come back to these core principles and working on the digestion, working on stress, working on all of the things that could be affecting this, and know that I think female, especially hormonal issues, those are simply the red flags. They're the canary in the coal mine. They are not the root cause. They are just a symptom. Just like weight gain is just a symptom. It's not your fault. Like this is just a symptom of the whole inflammation mess. So just keep that in mind and then start working on your foundations, right?
Yes. Awesome. Well, I'm going to go fix my audio. I will update this video with some more information about you and your recommendations, Julieann, for that lady you just mentioned.
Yeah, I'll type her over to you so that you have her info.
Yeah, I will definitely include that for everyone else to get access to because I'm curious too. But this has been awesome. I don't think we have any new questions. Let me look real fast. I don't see any new questions right now, so we can just address them. I'll tag you if I see anything I think you need to answer. And otherwise, I just want to thank you so much for being here today. This was phenomenal. Guys, I would love to have Julieann back to talk more to us about some other topics. So stay tuned in the coming weeks. I think we might be able to arrange that. But in the meantime, Julieann, thank you. And everyone in Limey and Crunchy that can kind of hear me, thank you for hopping on today. And I hope you guys have a wonderful rest of your week, everyone, okay?
Thanks for having me.
Thank you so much. Take care, guys.